Okay, hi everyone. My name is Rivia and I recently graduated from high school and I've taken AP Calculus. So today I'm going to be teaching you about integrals as areas, and basically today what we're going to be doing is finding the area under a curve based on your x-axis and function. So in this first one, let's just get into it. Basically what you want to do before even starting the problem is, or when you start the problem, is drawing a picture. So from here you can see that your x-axis, your x-interval is going to be from -5 to 7. And then your function is just 3. So it's going to be a line through 3 on the y-axis. So that's your little rectangle that you're going to base your area off now. So you just want to find the area under the curve within that rectangle. So it's going to be base times height, because that's the equation for a rectangle's area. And your base is going to be from -5 to 7. So that means your base is 12. And then your height is 3, because that's how high your rectangle is, because that's where the function went through. So for number 2, before we actually start drawing this, and I messed up here, I got ahead of myself, you want to actually change up your function a little bit to make it a little bit easier and more understandable to draw, because right now it looks kind of confusing, and you just kind of have to know that that you need to put this in a form where it can be a circle. So first you would take this and you would make it x squared plus y squared equals 64, and then y squared equals 64 minus x squared, because you're bringing your x squared to the other side. And then you just square root the whole thing. So y is equal to plus or minus square root of 64 minus x squared. So now that we have that, we can draw our graph, and we would know that it's a semicircle. So you kind of have to just like know a few equations like that. So yeah. So your x-interval is from -8 to 8, and your height is 8 based on the equation that we found. And now we would just want to find the area of the semicircle. So the formula for a semicircle area is pi r squared divided by 2. And your radius in this case is 8. So 8 squared pi over 2 is 32 pi. So for these next 2, 3, and 4, we're basically just plugging in to get our y-axis and our x-axis. X-intervals are given to us. So on the x-axis, it would be from -2 to 2. And then our height would be to 2, because if you just plug in 2 into that function, you get 0. So that's how you would find it. And I'm doing things a little bit weirdly here, so just kind of excuse that. You draw your line, and the height of the triangle itself is 4, but it goes through the y-axis. The y-intercept is at +2. So the area for a triangle would be 1/2 times base times height, where your where your base is going to be 4, and then your height would also be 4. I'm just going to move over here. So then you get 4 times 4, 16 over 2, which is 8. So that's your area. Moving on to number 4, it's basically the same thing that we did in number 3. Except things are going to be a little bit different here, because you're going to have a positive triangle and a negative triangle. So when we draw it, it's going to be on our x-axis. It's going to be from -1 to 3. That's our interval. And then it's going to intercept at -2. So just gonna draw some of the numbers and then make my line. Yeah, I'm thinking about it a little bit. Just want to make sure that it's good. So there it is. So now that you can see that it crosses the x-axis too. So we have two different triangles. One is a negative triangle, which is under the x-axis, and one is a positive triangle, which is above the x-axis. So it's going to have a negative area. So here we're just basically going to do the formula for a triangle, but you have to remember the negative. So it's going to be negative base times height over 2 plus positive base times height over 2. So that's going to be negative 3 times 3 over 2 plus 1 times 1, because that's your base and height over 2. So that's negative 4. So that's the area of this whole thing. Now number 5. You can see here that it's going to be an absolute value function that's shifted. So originally an absolute value function that has no shifts or no negative, that's just positive, would be graphed as kind of like a V shape with the center being at the origin. But here we know that that's not going to be the case, and that's not what it's going to look like. So your x interval is from negative 2 to 2. And then your height, it's going to be positive 2. Sorry. And so that's kind of that's where your point is at positive 2, where it's at the that's where your y-intercept is. So it's a negative, it's not negative, I'm sorry. It's a negative absolute value function, but the triangle itself is positive. So it's just a basic base times height divided by 2 formula. So that's your base is 4 times 2 over 2 equals 4. Now number 6. This one looks a little scary, but we're totally fine. And it's basically just putting together like two different shapes. It's not much harder than anything that we've been doing before. So we're just gonna draw this one by one and get through it. So the first part that you're going to want to draw is your first function, which is 3x minus 2. When you plug it in, you see that your x is 2/3. So that first little triangle right here is negative. So we're going to have a negative triangle as our first part. And then you're going to have a positive triangle. And then your last part, it's going to have your last piece is a horizontal 4. And x has to be greater than 2, so that's where it starts. So it's just a piecewise function where you're looking here and making your line, and then everything underneath it is what we're going to be finding the area of. And since before I do this little dotted line here, it was kind of a weird shape, it just makes it easier if you divide up the area into more manageable shapes. So we have a little triangle, a big triangle, and then a square. So it would be negative 2/3 plus 8/3 plus 12 overall. That's the area of each little part. And so, hold on. Sorry, let me go back. If you want that broken down a little bit, it would be negative 2/3 would come from here. So it would be negative 2/3 times 2 divided by 2, because that's your little triangle. And then for your big triangle, it would be 4/3 times 4 times 1/2. And then for your final big square here, it would be, or your rectangle, it would be 3 times 4. And that all equals 14 as your area. So now looking at the back page, here we're pretty much going to be doing, it's a little bit different from what we were doing on the first page because we're not actually going to be drawing anymore. We're given a drawing here and we have to base our answers off of that. So just remember that this shape is a little bit weird, but it's manageable if you divide up everything into smaller shapes that you know the formulas for. So hold on. Back here. So looking at number 7, you see that your x-axis is from, your x interval is from -4 to -2. So you can kind of, if you're doing this worksheet along with me, you can just shade in that little area and it'll make things a little bit easier when you're going to do it. So you can see here that they're pretty equal. So it's a negative triangle, and then a negative area, a triangle with negative area, and then a triangle with positive area. And since they have the same height and the same bases, you know that they would cancel each other out. You can do the math here, but if you want to just save time, you can go ahead and just write 0, because you can see based on this little picture that the overall area of this is 0 because they cancel each other out. So for for number 8, it's from -2 to 2. So it's this whole thing, and you don't want to kind of do the whole shape. You want to divide it up into a rectangle and a semicircle. So for your rectangle, it's base times height, so it's going to be 4 times 1. And then it's going to be 2 squared pi over 2, because that's your area for a semicircle, and your overall area is 4 plus 2 pi. Now for number 9, it's the same process. It's going to be from 2 to 7, so we're just going to shade in here, here, and there. My finger, we're not, like, it's under my finger. And I kind of forgot this part, so we're going to shade it now. Yeah. I forget that line is there because it's easier to do this whole piece as a triangle. So when we're doing it, we would do 1, because this is just 1 times 1 over 2, plus 2, because that's your base here, with your height being 1 over 2 times 1 equals 3 over 2. Now for your next one, basically it's a absolute value function, so everything is going to be positive. You're going to ignore, or you're going to basically it's all positive. There's no negative values here. So we're going to just basically look from 4 to 7. And so it's a little triangle and then this big triangle. So your little triangle is going to be 1 times 1 over 2 plus 2 times 2 over 2 equals 5 over 2. And now last part, it's the same thing as what we were doing up there. And yeah, so let's just get started. From here, it's from 0 to 11, so it's everything, pretty much. So we're just going to divide it up to make it a little bit easier. And here you can see that they cancel each other out, and then they also cancel each other out there. So essentially, all you're taking the area of here in this case would be this section, which is 3 times 2, -2 equals -6. That's your area. So that was a little bit fast, but here, these two cancel each other out, and these two cancel each other out, the areas, because it's negative and positive. Now in this case, what we're doing is we're going to look from 4 to 7. So from 4 to 7, kind of what we did above, except you have a 5 in front. So it's just everything multiplied by 5, which is -30. Now for number 13, it's going to be from 0 to 3, and it's going to be a negative value because we have that negative in front of our function. So it's this whole section, which is a triangle, so 2 times 2 over 2, plus 1/2, because it's a triangle again, equals -3 over 2. And remember, the formula for a triangle is 1/2 times base times height. And finally, we have from 3 to 4. So here we would do the formula for a trapezoid. So sum of the bases over 2 times 1 equals -3 over 2. And that's your answer. So that's the worksheet. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching. Yeah, bye.